Welcome to Void of Rules, where nightmares have no boundaries. In this channel we explore the darkest corners of horror that most dare not enter. Every video takes you deeper into the shadows where forgotten terrors wait. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers by year's end. The void hungers for new souls. And now, let's dive into the void. The Dalton Highway stretched before me like a faded scar across the Alaskan wilderness. My headlights barely penetrated the darkness as I pulled into the Northern Lights gas and convenience lot. The place looked exactly as described in the job posting. A lonely outpost of civilization nestled between endless forest and mountains. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, watching my breath cloud in the frigid air. Above me, ribbons of green and purple danced across the night sky. The aurora borealis, nature's most beautiful light show. Under different circumstances, I might have found it comforting. Now it just reminded me of that night on Mount Harper. The sky had looked like this then, too, before everything went wrong. The gas station's lights flickered slightly, drawing my attention to a hunched figure standing in the doorway. An older man with a thick grey beard and weathered skin watched me without expression. Walt Lusk, I presumed, my new employer. "You must be Caleb," he called out as I approached. No handshake offered. "Almost thought you weren't coming." "Sorry, road conditions were worse than expected." Walt grunted, turning back inside. "Always are. Come on, got a lot to cover before night falls." The interior of the station was surprisingly well maintained. Clean floors, stocked shelves, a small hot food section, and a counter with an ancient cash register. The normalcy was almost disappointing. What had I expected? Some kind of frontier trading post. "Coffee's free for employees," Walt said, pouring himself a cup. "You'll need it. Night shift here runs from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Not many customers after 9, but that doesn't mean you can sleep." I nodded. "Fine by me?" "You've got experience as a wilderness guide." The question hit like an icy blast. "Yes, several years." "Good. Means you respect nature, respect what it can do to the unprepared." Walt's eyes narrowed. "This place, it's different at night, especially in winter when the sun doesn't rise for months." I forced a tight smile. I've handled isolation before. "This isn't about isolation, son," Walt's voice dropped. "It's about what fills the void when civilization thins out. Come on, I'll show you the rest." He led me through a door marked "Employees Only" into a small break room with a mini fridge, microwave, and a fold-out cot in the corner. "You can rest here if needed, but never more than 20 minutes at a time," Walt instructed, "and never between midnight and 5 a.m. Those are the active hours." "Active hours for what?" I asked. Walt ignored the question, opening the mini fridge instead. On the inside of the door was a taped piece of paper with a handwritten list. "These are the rules. Memorize them, follow them exactly. No exceptions." I leaned closer to read. 1. Wind chimes must be hung outside the front door by 10:45 p.m. They chime when it's close, even if there's no wind. 2. If you hear breathing near the back fence, turn off every light. Do not move, do not speak, do not look outside. 3. Pump 4 is offline. If anyone insists on using it, give them a flashlight and lock the door once they step outside. 4. If the tall one appears on camera, turn the monitor off. Looking too long lets it see you back. 5. Place one Slim Jim on the back porch every hour. This is not optional. 6. If you find a large footprint in the snow, douse it in gas and burn it immediately. 7. Between midnight and 5 a.m, do not speak the word Bigfoot. Call it the tall one. It remembers its name now. I read the list twice, waiting for the punchline. When none came, I turned to Walt. "Is this some kind of hazing ritual? Scare the new guy?" Walt's expression remained deadly serious. You think I'd drive out here in this weather for a joke? These rules keep you alive. Break them at your own risk. What's the tall one? I asked skeptically. Something that's lived in these woods longer than people have. Something that's learned to imitate what it sees. Walt closed the fridge door firmly. The locals call it Bigfoot to help them sleep at night. Truth is much worse than any campfire story. The security monitor on the wall flicked between different camera views. Pumps, backlot, sides of the building, and the edge of the tree line. All quiet and still. One more thing, Walt said, pulling a set of brass wind chimes from a drawer. These go outside before 10:45, not 10:46, not 10:44. Exactly 10:45. Set an alarm on your phone. I took the chimes, feeling their weight. They made no sound as I held them. And Joe will be here in the morning to relieve you, Walt continued. She doesn't stay a minute past sundown, so don't be late tomorrow. What happens if I break a rule? I asked, half smiling. Walt didn't return the smile. First night, nothing happens. Station's testing you. Second night is when it notices if you're paying attention. He headed for the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. Why'd you take this job, Caleb? Nobody wants the night shift here, especially not in winter. I thought about the 2 empty tents on Mount Harper, the search parties, the questions I couldn't answer. Needed a change of scenery, I said simply. Walt nodded slowly. We all have our reasons. Just remember, out here, the night has teeth. After he left, I explored the station thoroughly. Everything seemed normal enough. The security system was old but functional. The back door had 3 heavy-duty locks. The windows were reinforced. Excessive for a gas station, but maybe theft was a problem out here. My first night passed uneventfully. A few truckers stopped for fuel and coffee. A local hunter bought supplies. By midnight, the station was silent except for the hum of the refrigeration units. At 10:45 exactly, I hung the wind chimes as instructed. They made no sound in the still air. Every hour, I dutifully placed a Slim Jim on the back porch, feeling increasingly foolish. At 6 a.m, the front door jingled, and a woman in her early 40s entered, stamping snow from her boots. She had dark hair with streaks of premature grey, and alert eyes that scanned the store before settling on me. You must be Caleb, she said, unwinding a scarf from her neck. I'm Joanna Griggs. Everyone calls me Joe. Nice to meet you, I replied, noticing how she kept glancing toward the windows. Quiet night. Good. She removed her heavy coat, revealing a rabbit's foot hanging from a leather cord around her neck. First nights usually are. Did Walt explain everything? The rules? Yeah, though I'm still not sure if you're all pulling my leg. Joe's smile didn't reach her eyes. I used to think the same thing. Trust me, the rules exist for a reason. She checked her watch. Sun rises at 10:32 today. I'll be gone by 4. That's early. I don't drive this road after dark, not anymore. She started counting the register. Any questions before you head out? I hesitated, then decided to test the waters. What's with pump 4? Joe's hands froze momentarily. It's been offline for years. But why? Looks functional from the outside. Some questions aren't worth asking, Caleb. She resumed counting. Get some sleep. Second night's always harder than the first. Joe wasn't wrong. My second night started badly and got worse. I arrived at 5:45 p.m. to find Joe already putting on her coat. Her movements hurried. You're early, I noted. Aurora's strong tonight. She nodded toward the window where green light pulsed across the darkening sky. That's never a good sign. Before I could question her meaning, Joe pressed something into my palm. Her rabbit's foot necklace. Just for tonight, she said quietly. Keep it in your pocket. Don't ask why. With that cryptic offering, she hurried out the door, her truck's headlights soon disappearing down the highway. The evening crawled by with only 2 customers. both locals who purchased their items quickly and left with nervous glances at the windows. By 9 p.m, I was completely alone. At 9:30, the wind picked up, a bitter, howling gale that made the whole building creak. I checked the security cameras. Nothing but swirling snow. At 10:30, my phone alarm reminded me about the wind chimes. I retrieved them from the drawer, but as I approached the front door, I hesitated. The storm outside was fierce now. Hanging wind chimes seemed pointless. They'd be blown away or buried in snow by morning. I placed them back in the drawer. One silly rule wouldn't matter. At 11 o'clock, I dutifully placed a Slim Jim on the back porch, fighting against the wind to open and close the door. At 11:45, the power flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. I checked the generator. Fuel levels were fine. At midnight, the wind stopped. Not gradually, all at once, as if someone had flipped a switch. The sudden silence was more unnerving than the howling had been. I checked the cameras again. The snow had settled, and the night was perfectly still. Too still. Even the aurora had dimmed to a faint glow. At 12:30, I placed another Slim Jim on the back porch. When I opened the door, I noticed something odd. The previous one was gone. Probably blown away by the storm, I reasoned, ignoring the fact that there was no wind now. At 1:14 a.m, I was restocking the cooler when I heard it. A soft, gentle knocking at the back door. 3 precise taps. I froze, a 6-pack of beer clutched in my hands. 3 more taps, slightly louder. I set down the beer and moved cautiously to the security monitor. The back door camera showed an empty porch. Nothing in the parking lot either. 3 more taps, followed by a sound that turned my blood to ice. Deep, raspy breathing, like something large trying to be very quiet. Rule 2 echoed in my mind. If you hear breathing near the back fence, turn off every light. Do not move, do not speak, do not look outside. My hand hovered over the main light switch. This was absurd, probably just the wind returning, or a local playing a prank on the new guy. The breathing grew louder. A slow, deliberate inhale followed by a fogged exhale, visible on the camera, but coming from something off-screen. I hit the lights. Darkness engulfed the station, broken only by the faint glow of the security monitor. The breathing continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, silence returned. My phone lit up with a text message, "Where are the wind chimes?" from Walt. As if in answer, something large moved at the edge of the camera's view. A tall, dark silhouette against the tree line. It stood upright like a man, but was much, much taller. For a brief moment, it seemed to look directly at the camera. I lunged for the monitor power button, remembering Rule 4 just in time. The screen went black. With shaking hands, I replied to Walt, "Forgot them, storm was too strong." His response came immediately, "Hang them now." I fumbled for my phone's flashlight, retrieved the wind chimes, and approached the front door. My hand trembled as I unlocked it. The night air hit me like a physical blow, not from its coldness, but from its weight. It felt thick, watchful. Working quickly, I hung the chimes and retreated inside, locking the door securely. The chimes made no sound, yet, as I watched through the glass, they began to sway slightly. There was no wind. My phone buzzed again. "Stay in the office, do not look out windows until sunrise." I didn't need to be told twice. I retreated to the employee room, locked the door, and huddled on the cot. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the building, every distant sound from the forest, had me flinching. When my hourly alarm went off, I realized with horror I needed to place another Slim Jim on the porch, but that meant going near the windows, breaking Walt's instructions. As if reading my thoughts, another text arrived. "Use back door, keep eyes down, drop Slim Jim, and close door. 10 seconds max." Heart pounding, I made my way to the back door. The security monitor remained off, leaving me blind to what might be waiting outside. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door, dropped the meat stick on the porch without looking up and slammed the door shut. The entire process took perhaps 5 seconds, but I felt exposed, watched. The rest of the night passed in a haze of anxiety. At 6 a.m. exactly, the front door opened, and Jo hurried in, looking pale. "You're alive," she said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Walt told me what happened." "What did happen exactly?" My voice was hoarse from hours of silence. Jo locked the door behind her and turned the sign to closed. "The tall one visited. It doesn't usually come so early in someone's tenure. You must have caught its interest." "This isn't funny anymore," I snapped, fatigue making me irritable. "I want real answers." "Then talk to Walt," she replied calmly. "He's waiting for you at the diner in Coldfoot, 20 miles south." She handed me a small canister. "And take this, it's bear spray, but it works on other things too, just in case." The diner was nearly empty when I arrived. Walt sat in a corner booth, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Sit," he said as I approached. "Food's coming." I slid into the booth across from him. "I want an explanation." "You got one, in the rules." Walt's weathered face was serious. "But you didn't listen." "They're nonsensical. Wind chimes and beef jerky to ward off. What, some local version of Bigfoot?" Walt's hand slammed down, rattling the cutlery. "Don't say that name, not even here." A waitress delivered plates of eggs and bacon. We sat in tense silence until she left. "The thing in those woods," Walt finally continued, voice low. "It's not what cryptid hunters think. Not some missing link or undiscovered primate. It's something else. Something that learns by watching. Imitates." "Imitates what?" "Whatever gets a reaction. For decades it mimicked bears, wolves, moose, creatures that made sense in these woods. Then tourists started coming with their cameras and He caught himself. Their cryptid theories. They wanted to see something specific, and it adapted." I pushed my food around the plate. "If you expect me to believe..." "I don't care what you believe," Walt interrupted. "I care that you follow the rules. The rules keep it curious but contained. Break them and it gets ideas." "Like what?" Walt's eyes met mine. "Like coming inside, like taking more than Slim Jims, like wearing someone else's skin." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the Alaskan cold. "The chimes," Walt continued, "they disorient it, something about the frequency. The meat is an offering, keeps it fed without hunting. The rules about not looking at it prevent it from forming connections." "Connections?" "It learns through observation. The longer you watch it, the more it watches back, the more it understands." Walt leaned forward. 3 years ago we had another night attendant, fellow named Greer, smart guy, thought the rules were superstition, started studying the tall one through the cameras." "What happened to him?" Walt's expression darkened. "Found his truck at the trailhead to Finger Mountain. Never found him. But for weeks after, customers reported seeing someone watching them from the tree line. Someone who looked like Greer, but moved all wrong. My appetite vanished completely. Why keep the station open? Why not just shut it down?" "Because it was there before the station, before the road. The station doesn't attract it. It contains it. Gives it routine, predictability." Walt sighed heavily. "My grandfather built that place back in the 40s. Not as a business, but as a boundary." "A boundary for what?" "Between its world and ours, each rule is a line it can't cross. Break too many rules and..." Walt trailed off. "Look, I can find another night attendant if you want out, no shame in it." I should have said yes. Should have walked away, right then. But something kept me rooted in place. The same something that had drawn me to Alaska after Mount Harper. The need to understand what lurks in wilderness darkness. "I'll stay," I heard myself say. "Just tell me everything I need to know." Walt studied me for a long moment. "There's a reason it noticed you so quickly, you know. People it's encountered before. They leave a mark. Invisible to us, but clear as day to it." My mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that accident on your guiding expedition, the one that made you leave the business, might not have been as random as you think." The memories flooded back. The campsite, the 2 empty tents, the strange tracks leading into the forest, the sounds I'd heard that night but dismissed as wind. "How did you know about that?" I whispered. "Small communities up here. Word travels." Walt pushed his plate away. "But more importantly, you're marked now. It remembers you. So you need to be twice as careful with the rules." As we drove back toward the station, Walt explained more about each rule and its purpose. The specificity of 10:45 for the chimes. Apparently it was exactly when the tall one began its nightly patrol. Pump 4, built over what Walt vaguely described as a thin spot. The camera warning. Something about electronic eyes amplifying connection. "And one more thing," Walt added as we neared the station. "Every full moon, it tests the boundaries harder. Next one's in 4 days. I'll be there that night to help." The next few nights passed without incident. I followed the rules religiously. Chimes at 10:45, Slim Jims hourly. All cameras off between midnight and 5 a.m. During daylight hours, I researched local legends at the small Coldfoot library. What I found was unsettling. Native stories spoke of those who wear others and tall shadows that hunger for names. Early settlers reported encounters with creatures that mimicked human behavior imperfectly, leading to dozens of disappearances in the 1800s. More recently, cryptid enthusiasts had reframed these legends into standard Bigfoot mythology. But reading between the lines, these weren't stories about an undiscovered primate. They were warnings about something that pretended to be recognizable to lure people in. On my 5th night, the rules were tested. A battered pickup truck pulled in around 11:30 p.m. The driver, a heavy-set man in hunting gear, came inside stamping snow from his boots. "Need to fill up," he grunted, slapping a credit card on the counter. "Which pump?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. 4, closest to my truck." My mouth went dry. "I'm sorry, sir, pump 4 is out of order. Has been for years." The man frowned. "Looks fine to me, lights on and everything." I glanced at the window. He was right, pump 4's light was on, though I knew for certain it had been dark when I started my shift. "System says it's offline," I insisted. "You can use any other pump." "Look, I don't have time for this. My buddy's waiting at the hunting cabin, and I'm already running late." He leaned forward. "Just turn on pump 4. Rule 3 echoed in my mind. If anyone insists on using it, give them a flashlight and lock the door once they step outside. "Sir, I really can't." "Turn it on." Each word punctuated with a finger tap on the counter. With a sinking feeling, I reached under the counter for the station flashlight, a heavy mag light that Walt kept fully charged. "Here," I said, sliding it across the counter. "You'll need this, the pump area lighting is unreliable." The man took the flashlight with a confused expression. "Whatever, just activate the pump." I pressed the override button for pump 4, hearing a distant hum as it powered up. The man nodded in satisfaction and headed for the door. As he walked out, I moved quickly to lock it behind him. Through the glass, I watched him stride toward his truck, maglite beam bouncing across the pavement. He reached pump 4 and removed the nozzle. Nothing unusual happened. I began to wonder if the rules were just Walt's paranoia after all. Then, the station lights flickered, and the security monitor behind me automatically switched to the pump area camera. The man was still fueling, but he was no longer alone. At the edge of the light stood a figure, tall, impossibly tall, with proportions that seemed almost human but stretched too far. It was covered in dark hair or fur, its face obscured by shadow. The hunter hadn't noticed it yet. The thing took one step forward, then another, moving with unnatural smoothness. I lunged for the monitor power button, remembering Rule 4 just in time. The screen went black, but I'd seen enough to understand why Walt had been so insistent. Minutes passed. I stood frozen at the counter, straining to hear anything from outside. Finally, there was a gentle knock at the door. "Hey, let me back in, pump's finished." The man's voice sounded normal, if a bit irritated. I hesitated, hand on the lock. "Sir, is everything okay out there?" "Course it is, just cold as hell. Open up." Something felt wrong. I keyed the intercom instead of opening the door. "Did you see anything unusual out there?" A pause, too long. "Nah, just some deer near the tree line. Come on, man, it's freezing." "What kind of truck are you driving?" I asked suddenly. Another pause. "What? A Chevy?" "Blue Chevy. You just saw me pull up in it." "And how did you pay? Cash or card?" "Card. Look, what's with the 20 questions?" But I had already turned to look at the counter where his credit card should have been. There was nothing there. My blood ran cold. I keyed the intercom again. "Sir, I'm sorry, but company policy states we close all pumps at midnight. You can come back tomorrow morning." The pounding on the door began immediately, far too forceful for a normal man. "Let me in!" The voice was changing, deepening, stretching like taffy. "I gave you payment." I backed away from the door as the pounding intensified. The entire front of the station seemed to shake. And then, silence. I stayed motionless for several minutes before finding the courage to turn the security monitor back on. The camera showed an empty lot. No blue Chevy, no hunter, but Pump 4's nozzle lay on the ground, the hose stretched and torn, as if yanked with tremendous force. I called Walt immediately. "It happened again." His voice was grim when I explained. "That's the third time in 10 years. Always the same. Always a hunter who needs Pump 4 specifically." "Is he—" I couldn't finish the question. "Don't think about it. Not your fault. You followed the rule," Walt said firmly. "But it's escalating faster with you than the others. Been thinking on why that might be? Because of my past encounter? The expedition?" "Partly. But I think there's more." Walt paused. "Caleb, what exactly happened on Mount Harper? The real story, not what you told the authorities." The question hit me like a physical blow. For months I'd suppressed those memories, filed them away as trauma-induced hallucinations. "We made camp at dusk," I began slowly. "Standard 3-person expedition, me guiding 2 photographers, hoping to catch the aurora. Middle of the night, I heard something moving around the tents. Thought it was a bear. But it wasn't. Not a question, and no. When I looked out, I saw myself, standing at the edge of camp, staring at me. My voice shook slightly. I blinked, and it was gone. Convinced myself it was a dream, but in the morning, both clients were missing. Just gone. Tents empty, sleeping bags still warm." "And the authorities blamed you? Guide negligence?" "They never said it outright, but everyone thought it. 2 people don't just vanish into the wilderness, without a trace." Walt was quiet for so long, I thought the call had dropped. "Finally. It's chosen you, Caleb. Been following you ever since, that's why it's so active now. You're not just any night attendant. You're familiar prey." "What do I do?" "Come full moon, we end this. There's a way to push it back, reset the boundaries. But until then, follow every rule. No exceptions." After we hung up, I turned to find the rabbit's foot necklace Joe had given me, lying on the counter. I was certain I'd left it in my pocket. Beside it was a Slim Jim, partially eaten. The days leading up to the full moon were filled with research and increasing dread. I split my time between working nights at the station and digging through every resource I could find on local folklore. Joe proved unexpectedly helpful, providing access to her late father's journals. He'd been a cultural anthropologist, studying native legends. Dad spent 30 years documenting stories the tour books ignore, she explained, passing me a stack of leather-bound notebooks. The real stories. The journals revealed a consistent theme across different tribes and eras, entities in the wilderness that stole not just physical forms, but identities. Consciousness parasites that learned through observation and required regular appeasement to remain docile. Most disturbingly, several accounts mentioned thin places where these entities could more easily interact with our world. Places often marked by people who'd encountered them before. People like me. When I asked Jo why she stayed despite knowing the danger, her expression darkened. 3 years ago, I was working late. Sunsets early in winter, you know. I was closing up when a woman appeared outside. Said her car broke down and needed to use the phone. Jo touched her rabbit's foot necklace unconsciously. Something seemed off. She kept staring at me, mimicking my movements slightly. Then she said my name, though I wasn't wearing a name tag and hadn't introduced myself. What happened? Walt arrived with a shotgun, fired over her head. She backed away, but the way she moved... Jo shuddered, like her joints were in all the wrong places. Walt got me inside, did some ritual with salt and gasoline, told me the tall one had marked me, but the station's rules would keep me safe as long as I never stayed after dark. The night before the full moon, I found something unexpected while cleaning the storage room, a hidden panel behind the paper towel shelf. Inside was a weather-beaten journal labelled simply Night Log. The handwriting changed every few pages. Different attendants recording their experiences. Most entries were mundane, but occasionally one would describe encounters with the tall one. The most recent entries belonged to someone named Greer, the attendant Walt had mentioned. His final entry chilled me. Day 54. It's learning to speak. Not just mimic words, but form thoughts. Last night it called my name through the intercom, my actual name, though I never wear identification. Said it just wanted to talk. Rules say never respond between midnight and 5. But what if communication could stop this cycle? What if it's intelligent, just misunderstood? Tomorrow, I'm going to try something. I found tracks leading to Finger Mountain. If I follow them back to the source, maybe I can negotiate some kind of understanding. Walt will be furious, but this can't go on forever. The entry ended there. According to Walt, Greer was never seen again. Or was he? The thought that had been building in my mind for days suddenly crystallized. What if the tall one wasn't just mimicking people physically, but absorbing them completely? Memories, knowledge, personality, everything that made them who they were. If that were true, then the thing in the woods wasn't just dangerous. It was becoming more human with each victim. Learning, adapting, evolving. And if it had chosen me specifically, followed me from Mount Harper to this remote station, then it wanted something from me beyond just another identity to collect. The realization led me to one final piece of research, my own past. I called my former employer, the expedition company that had fired me after the Mount Harper incident. Caleb, Jesus, didn't expect to hear from you. My old boss sounded genuinely surprised. How's Alaska treating you? Fine. Listen, I need information about Mount Harper. Were there any previous incidents there? Disappearances, strange sightings, anything unusual? A long pause. Why are you asking now? Please, it's important. He sighed heavily. We didn't tell you because you were already dealing with enough, but yes. 3 years before your expedition, another guide reported something strange in that same area. Said he saw himself standing at the edge of camp one night. My blood ran cold. What happened to him? Nothing. All his clients were fine, but he quit guiding afterward. Last I heard, he bought some remote gas station up north. Name was Walter something. Lusk, I think. The revelation about Walt hit me like a physical blow. He'd had the same experience I had, seen the same doppelganger, but escaped whatever fate had befallen my clients, and he'd never told me. The full moon rose huge and ominous over the station that night. Walt arrived at 9 p.m. carrying a duffel bag that clinked with glass contents. "Got everything we need," he said by way of greeting. "Joe's staying in town tonight. Safer there." "You lied to me," I replied coldly. "You knew what happened on Mount Harper because it happened to you first." Walt froze momentarily, then sighed. Not exactly how I wanted to start this conversation, but yes, it found me first. Followed me here when I fled south. That's when I met the previous owner of this station, a man named Erickson, who'd been keeping it contained for decades. He taught me the rules, the rituals. When he passed, I took over. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? That the thing that took your clients had been hunting me years before? That it's been hunting my family for generations? Walt began unpacking his bag. Salt, gasoline, strange herbs, and a set of silver chimes different from the brass ones we normally used. Your family, I echoed. My grandfather didn't build this station by accident. The tall one has been fixated on my bloodline since my great-grandfather encountered it in the 1880s. Each generation, it takes someone from us, marks us. Walt rolled up his sleeve to reveal a strange birthmark, 3 parallel lines that looked almost like claw marks. Instinctively, I touched my own shoulder where 3 similar marks had appeared after Mount Harper, marks I'd attributed to injury during the frantic search for my missing clients. We're connected to it, Walt continued, and tonight we use that connection to push it back, reset the boundaries. How? Blood ritual. Old as time, we mark the perimeter with our blood, the blood it desires, mixed with salt and certain herbs. Then we burn the mixture at 7 points around the station. Creates a barrier it can't cross for another cycle. How long is a cycle? Walt's expression was grim. Used to be 7 years, then 5. Last time was just 3. It's getting stronger, more persistent, learning faster. As darkness deepened, we prepared the mixture according to Walt's instructions. The full moon cast an eerie glow across the snow-covered landscape, bright enough to work by, without flashlights. Start at the north point, Walt instructed, handing me a jar of the mixture and a lighter. I'll take south, move clockwise, don't stop, don't look back, and whatever you hear, don't respond. What will I hear? Voices, people you know, people you've lost. It'll say anything to stop the ritual. We began at opposite sides of the property. I poured the mixture in a small pile at the northernmost point, just as Walt had demonstrated, and set it alight. The flames burned an unnatural blue-green, and the smoke curled in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, like written language. Moving clockwise to the northeast position, I repeated the process. The night remained eerily still. No wind, no animal sounds, not even the distant hum of the generator seemed to penetrate the silence. At the eastern point, I heard it, a voice that made my skin crawl with its terrible familiarity. "Caleb, help us, please." It was Amy, one of my clients from Mount Harper. Her voice soft, pleading, exactly as I remembered it. "We're still out here, Caleb. You left us behind." I nearly stumbled, the jar of mixture slipping in my suddenly sweaty hands. It wasn't real. Couldn't be real. Amy was gone. "The tall one doesn't kill them," Walt had explained earlier. "It keeps them, parts of them, enough to use their voices, their memories." I forced myself forward to the southeast point, poured the mixture with trembling hands, and lit it. More blue-green flames, more smoke forming impossible patterns. "Why are you burning me, Caleb?" Amy's voice again, now from just behind me. "Don't you understand? I'm still here. I'm part of it now. And soon you will be too. Don't look back," I whispered to myself. "Don't respond." At the southern point, I could see Walt in the distance, working at his western position. He moved with practiced efficiency, his face set in grim determination. As I prepared the southern point, a new voice spoke, deeper, masculine. Caleb Rourke, my replacement. I froze. That voice belonged to no one I knew. I'm Greer, the one before you. Walt didn't tell you everything, did he? About how the Lusk family has been feeding it for generations. One sacrifice every cycle. My hands shook as I lit the mixture. Why do you think he hired you? Someone already marked? Already connected? Greer's voice laughed bitterly. He's not trying to banish it. He's preparing you for it. The southern flames burned higher than the others, the smoke thicker. Ask him about the Lusk family tradition. Ask him why there's always a night attendant who disappears before the ritual. Ask him. I continued to the southwestern point, trying to block out the voice, but doubt had taken root. Why had Walt hired me specifically? How had he known about my past? As I reached the western point, completing my half of the circle, I saw Walt finishing the northwestern point. Our eyes met across the station lot, and he nodded grimly. Together, we approached the centre of the property, where the final mixture would be burned. As we walked, the voices grew more numerous, overlapping. Amy, her boyfriend Todd, Greer, others I didn't recognise, all pleading, threatening, bargaining. It's working, Walt shouted over the cacophony. The voices mean it's feeling the boundaries. We reached the centre, a spot Walt had marked earlier with a strange symbol etched into the snow. He placed the final jar in the middle and motioned for me to step back. Once I light this, run for the station, he instructed. No matter what happens, no matter what you see or hear, get inside and lock the door. What about you? Walt's eyes were resigned. I'll be right behind you. Something in his tone made me hesitate. Walt, what aren't you telling me? Before he could answer, the security lights around the station extinguished simultaneously. The darkness that rushed in wasn't just an absence of light. It felt alive, hungry. At the edge of the property, just beyond the burning points we'd established, stood the tall one. In the moonlight, I could finally see it clearly. 8 feet tall at least, covered in dark fur with limbs too long for its body. But its face, God, its face. Not quite human, not quite animal, but a terrible amalgamation of features. Eyes too large, too knowing. A mouth that stretched too wide, filled with too many teeth. And it was smiling. Walter Lusk, it spoke, its voice a discordant blend of every person it had ever taken. Time to uphold your end of our arrangement. Walt struck his lighter and held it over the final mixture. You get nothing more from me or my family, he growled. The boundaries are reset. 7 more years. The creature took a step forward, then stopped, as if hitting an invisible wall at the perimeter we'd created. It tilted its head, studying us with those 2 intelligent eyes. You know that's not how this works, Walter. Your great-grandfather made a promise. 1 Lusk per cycle. The bloodline must continue to feed me. Its gaze shifted to me. Unless you found a substitute. A terrible understanding dawned on me. Greer's voice had been telling the truth. Walt! I backed away from him. What is it talking about? Walt's expression was agonized. I never meant for you to be a sacrifice, Caleb. I swear it. I hired you because you were already marked, already connected. I thought together we could break the cycle. Lies, the tall one purred. He hired you because his own son refused to take over the station, refused to continue the family tradition. He needed fresh blood. I looked at Walt, searching for denial. Found none. My family has contained it for 4 generations, Walt said quietly. Each time it demands one of us. My father, his father before him. If we refuse... He gestured to the wilderness around us. It takes dozens instead. Hunting parties, travellers, anyone in these woods. So, you've been feeding it. 1 victim per cycle. Revulsion and betrayal washed over me. No, Walt's eyes flashed. We tried to find another way. Each generation sought to break the cycle. My father almost succeeded, but he glanced at the tall one. It adapted, evolved, started marking people beyond our family. People like you. The tall one's smile widened impossibly. Clever, Walter, using my own mark against me. But tonight someone must cross the boundary. Someone must feed the cycle. Walt squared his shoulders. Then it will be me. He thrust the lighter into my hand. Light it when I cross the line. It will reset the boundaries. Trap it with me. Keep the station. Keep the rules. Walt, no! But he was already moving, striding purposefully toward the tall one. Run, Caleb, he shouted over his shoulder. Light it and run. I should have obeyed. Should have lit the mixture and fled to the safety of the station. But the pieces were finally falling into place. Mount Harper, the missing clients, my strange compulsion to come north to Alaska. None of it had been coincidence. Walt reached the edge of our makeshift boundary. The tall one reached for him with unnaturally long fingers. But before they connected, I made my decision. I sprinted forward, grabbed Walt's collar, and yanked him backward with all my strength. He fell hard into the snow. What are you doing? He gasped. I handed him back the lighter. Breaking the cycle. Before he could stop me, I ran straight at the tall one, breaching the boundary line we'd created. The effect was immediate. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet, reality bending like a reflection in troubled water. The tall one loomed over me, its smile now a rictus of triumph. At last, it breathed, reaching for me. Behind me, I heard Walt's desperate shout, followed by the whoosh of flames as he lit the final mixture. Blue-green fire erupted in a perfect circle around the property, momentarily illuminating everything with unnatural clarity. The tall one shrieked, a sound no human throat could produce, as the flames rose higher. I felt its cold fingers brush my cheek, and then nothing. The world went dark. I awoke to the sound of wind chimes. My eyes opened to fluorescent lights in the familiar ceiling of the station's break room. My body ached as if I'd run a marathon, and my head throbbed with every heartbeat. Easy, Joe's voice came from nearby. You've been out for nearly a day. I turned to find her sitting beside the cot, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept much either. What happened? My voice was a painful rasp. Walt says you tried to sacrifice yourself, idiot move. Despite her harsh words, Joe's expression was kind as she helped me sit up. Lucky for you, the ritual worked anyway. Boundaries reset. The tall one pushed back, for now. She handed me a glass of water. Walt's outside securing the perimeter, making sure everything held. As I sipped the water, fragmented memories surfaced, running toward the creature, the cold touch of its fingers, the blue-green fire. But there was something else, something important hovering just beyond recall. How did I get back inside? Joe hesitated. Walt dragged you. Said you collapsed right at the boundary line. The tall one couldn't cross once the final fire was lit. Something about her explanation felt wrong, but before I could press further, the break room door opened and Walt entered. He looked haggard, aged years, in a single night. You're awake, he noted flatly. Good, we need to talk. Joe glanced between us. I'll give you two some privacy. After she left, Walt sat heavily in the chair she'd vacated. That was foolish, what you did. Brave, but foolish. Did it work? Is the cycle broken? Not broken. Reset. 7 years until the next confrontation. Walt rubbed his weathered face. But something's different this time. The boundary feels thinner, like it didn't fully take. Because of what I did? Partly, but also because it's stronger now. More adaptable. Walt fixed me with an intense stare. It touched you, Caleb, before the boundary closed. What do you remember? I tried to focus on those final moments. Cold, its fingers on my face, And then, voices. So many voices. Whose voices? Amy and Todd from Mount Harper, Greer, others I didn't know. I swallowed hard. They're still conscious in there, aren't they? Still aware, even after it takes them? Walt nodded grimly. For a time. Eventually they fade into it completely, become part of its collective consciousness. But at first, yes, they remain somewhat themselves. A terrible thought struck me. Walt, did it take part of me? I don't think so, not enough time. But his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Still, it marked you even more strongly now, connected you more deeply to it. As I processed this, another fragment of memory surfaced, a brief glimpse of something behind the tall one as I'd faced it. A shape in the darkness, watching from the trees. Something familiar. There was something else out there, I said slowly. Another presence behind the tall one. Walt went very still. What did it look like? I barely saw it, just a silhouette. But it seemed, I don't know, protective, not of me, but of the tall one. A guardian, Walt whispered, face paling. The legends mention them, servants created from fragments of those it's taken. Created from who? Walt met my eyes directly. Family members usually, those with the strongest connection to the marked ones. The implication hit me like a physical blow. My father. He disappeared in these woods when I was a child. Hunting trip gone wrong. They never found his body. Jesus, Walt breathed. That's why it followed you from Mount Harper. Why it's been hunting you specifically. You're not just marked, you're blood connected. Like my family. The revelation should have horrified me, but instead it brought a strange clarity. All these years, I carried the weight of my father's mysterious disappearance. Now, finally, I understood. That's why I felt drawn north, I realized. Why I took this job despite everything that happened on Mount Harper. Some part of me knew. Walt nodded slowly. The blood calls to blood. Always has. He leaned forward. Caleb, this changes things. You're part of this now. More deeply than I realized. The station, the boundaries, the rules. They'll need a keeper after I'm gone. You want me to take over? Continue your family's legacy? It was never just my family's burden to bear. It always needed those connected to it. Walt's expression softened slightly. But the choice is yours. You can walk away, head south. The mark will fade eventually if you go far enough. Start fresh. I thought about leaving, returning to a normal life far from this frozen outpost. But the memory of those voices, Amy, Todd, maybe even my father somewhere in that terrible chorus, kept me rooted in place. I'll stay, I heard myself say. Teach me everything you know. 3 months passed. Winter loosened its grip on the Alaskan wilderness, the days gradually lengthening as spring approached. I continued working the night shift, following the rules with religious precision. The tall one remained beyond the boundaries we'd reset, though occasionally I would glimpse movement at the edge of the forest or hear distant, almost human calls in the night. Walt proved to be a thorough teacher. Each day he shared more knowledge about the station, the rituals, the history of the entity we contained. The Lusk family journals revealed generations of guardians, each finding new ways to strengthen the boundaries, each sacrificing something of themselves to maintain the balance. The rules evolve because it evolves, Walt explained one evening as we checked the perimeter markings. Every 7 years, it comes back different, smarter, more adapted to our defenses. And the station? Why a gas station specifically? Wasn't always. Started as a trading post in my great-grandfather's day, then a hunting cabin, then a roadhouse when the highway came through. The form doesn't matter, only the location. This exact spot is a nexus point. A thin place, I supplied, remembering the native legends. Exactly. A place where boundaries between worlds blur. The station is built directly over the thinnest point, containing it like a cork in a bottle. Jo continued working mornings, though she'd begun staying slightly later each day, gradually overcoming her fear of the station after dark. The three of us formed an unlikely family, united by our shared knowledge and purpose. On a clear April evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon much later than it had in winter, Walt approached me with a small wooden box. "Time you had this," he said, setting it on the counter. Inside was a key unlike any I'd seen before. Ancient iron, intricately wrought with symbols, matching those in the ritual. "What does it open?" Walt's expression was solemn. "The foundation, under the station, where it all began." He led me to the storage room, moved aside shelving I'd always assumed was fixed in place, revealing a trapdoor so seamlessly integrated into the floor I'd never noticed it. The key turned with surprising ease, and the door lifted to expose stone steps descending into darkness. "Every keeper needs to see what we're truly guarding," Walt said, handing me a flashlight. "Go on, I'll wait here." The steps led to a small chamber hewn from bedrock, far older than the station above. The walls were covered in markings, some I recognized from the ritual, others entirely foreign to any language I knew. In the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal. Atop it sat a jar made of dark glass, sealed with wax and iron bands. Inside was nothing visible to the eye, yet the air around it seemed to distort slightly, as if something was pushing against the glass from within. "What is it?" I asked when I returned upstairs, shaken by the encounter. "The first piece," Walt answered. "The original fragment my great-grandfather captured. The seed from which the Tall One grew in our world." "Why not destroy it?" "Break the jar, release what's inside uncontrolled." "No." Walt shook his head firmly. "The rules, the boundaries, the station, they don't just keep it out. They keep the fragment contained." That night, I hung the wind chimes at exactly 10:45 p.m., listening to their gentle tinkling in the spring breeze. On the security monitor, I watched the edge of the forest with new understanding. The Tall One was there, just beyond the camera's range, waiting, learning, planning for the next cycle. But for now, the boundaries held. At midnight, I placed a Slim Jim on the back porch, reciting the protection words Walt had taught me. As I turned to go back inside, I noticed a figure standing at the tree line, too far to make out clearly but distinctly human in shape. My father, perhaps, or what remained of him. I raised my hand in a solemn gesture, acknowledging the connection between us. The figure remained motionless for a long moment, then retreated into the darkness. The next morning I trained a new night attendant, a young woman named Ellie, who'd come north seeking solitude after her own encounter with something unexplainable in the wilderness. "The rules seem strange," she remarked as I walked her through them, "but I guess every job has its quirks." I smiled faintly, recognizing my own initial skepticism in her expression. "The wind chimes go out at exactly 10:45, I explained. "Not a minute earlier, not a minute later." "What happens if I forget them?" she asked, half joking. I met her gaze steadily. "First night, nothing happens. Station's just testing you. Second night is when it notices if you're paying attention." Her smile faltered slightly at my serious tone. "I'll remember," she promised, and so the cycle continued. The station, the rules, the boundary between our world and whatever lay beyond it. Above us, the aurora borealis danced across the sky. No longer a mystery, but a warning system I finally understood. The night still had teeth, but now so did I. As Walt had said, out here, where civilization thins out, something always fills the void. The question is whether that something will be controlled, contained, understood, or whether it will wear your face when it comes for others. I hung the wind chimes and waited for darkness.